This is day 4 of the August 87 7-day retreat. Several questions and discussions in meetings have concerned the self and the making of effort. Two people, I think, if I remember right, mentioning you talk about no effort but just to get here or just to get out of bed in the morning is an effort. That's a nice little example which one can examine carefully, this getting out of the bed in the morning, because it is simple. Maybe not easy, but simple. We'll do that later and start out with another question about self, which went something like this. It is hard for me to think that the one who is talking with you right now is just thought. Hard for me to think or imagine or to believe or to feel that the one who is talking to you right now or listening to you is just a thought. I don't think it has ever been said that this deep, solid feeling, conviction that one is a self is just a thought or a bunch of thoughts and images. We do talk a lot about self-image because it's a very discernible manifestation of this feeling of self. But it is always pointed out that there isn't a thought that comes up in the mind that is not accompanied by sensations, feelings, emotions, turbulence, upset, conflict, and so forth. Not all of those, but any one of those or any combination of those. A frightening thought arising in the mind, one thought, can set the whole human organism into turbulence, motion. We've often listed and we'll list it again because there's always many new people who haven't heard it, or one may have heard it but not seen it for oneself. And that's the important thing, not the hearing of it and the remembering of it, but the direct awareness of that this takes place, that when one frightening thought crosses the mind, there may be sensations in the bowels, the stomach, the heart, the lungs, the throat, the veins, the muscles. Because the organism has evolved for millions of years to survive, protect itself from danger. At the signal of a danger, there are all of these manifestations, the queasy feeling in the bowels, wanting to evacuate, the stomach wanting to evacuate, the heart beating faster, a rushing of blood to the muscles or head, muscles tensing to take flight, to run for one's life or to fight for one's life. The loss of appetite is when one is to run, one isn't to feel like eating, sitting down and eating. An animal that is in danger doesn't continue browsing. I mean in real danger, and the animal has very fine sense when the predator is no longer just yawning and resting like a lion, but is about to, or lioness, they do the hunting, is about to start the hunt. Then the interest in browsing or mating is over. And then all of these other things are set into motion. And the organism, the brain, does not distinguish between a real, actual, physical, life-threatening danger and a threatening thought, which may just imagine a danger. The response is very similar. One may have missed the thought consciously, may have flitted through so fast, may not have been aware of it, but one is aware of all of these other symptoms, wondering where they come from. But if there is alertness and awareness, one can find that one thought that flitted through can do this. And of course, we usually don't just have one thought, there's a barrage of thoughts. Or one thought, I've done something well, or he likes me, she pays attention to me, they admire me. One such thought, the seeing of it, the sensations that come from that trigger all kinds of emotions, energies, of what we experience as good feelings. Thoughts and feelings and emotions are interconnected. I cannot give the physiological, anatomical, electrochemical explanation of it, but one can, if one is interested, read up on this. This interconnected network of brain, thought, emotion, muscle, flexing and so forth. And not only that network, but thoughts are interconnected with each other. They are associated. If something has been frightening to one, something that was in the vicinity of the frightening stimulus just happened to be contiguous in time and space, may become the frightening stimulus because it was just associated in time and space. May not have been the thing that really frightened one, but because it's associated, it also can set up this whole circuit of responses which are felt as good or unbearable or awful or whatever. So going back to the question, is this person here who is sitting and talking just thought? The me, is the me just thought? No, it is not just thought. It is thought in all the connected physical responses. It is the feeling that one is this body. One may not have this feeling. One may be clear about this, that this physical organism is what it is and not be identified with it. But one must not be too quick in saying, I'm not identified with my body. We are. We are even identified with our name. A good, so-called good family name, or maybe a not so good family name, depending on what society one travels in. And one's first name one may be very much identified with, or one may hate one's first name and have bad feelings about it. We once talked about that the way we were called by our first name, by our parents, our mother, father, brothers and sisters, the ring in the voice, whether it was affectionate, protective, endearing, or stern and threatening, may also be associated with the feeling about our name. And ourselves, because we identify with our name. This is me. We have a tremendous store of knowledge about our past life. I mean this life, but the past. Like photo albums of pictures, ideas, remembered events, stored knowledge, not just the knowledge learned in school and university. Anything that has been experienced is stored as knowledge. Also, physical knowledge about how to ride a bike, drive a car. We are identifying with this knowledge as being me, don't we? Because we're proud of it if we can display it, the knowledge. If someone seems to admire our knowledge, as we are able to provide information when it is questioned in a conversation, the one who knows is admired, gets a certain standing in the group. This has happened since we've been in school and before. There's a great admiration for knowledge in this society, civilization. Or the other side of it, if one doesn't have knowledge which somebody else has, a feeling of inferiority, felt as being me, inferior, in comparison to him or her who knows so much, who is so knowledgeable, so versatile. So not only the identity with knowledge or the lack of knowledge adds to this feeling of me, the image of me, but the comparison with others, in which one comes out at the top end, as somebody called it, or at the bottom end. And with this comparison that goes on in human beings, because we have been compared since the day we were born by our parents and people who were charged with taking care of us. There's a constant comparison going on of children, not just about the facts of their size and weight, but their character, their personality. We just visited some people during last vacation. Had 3 little children. The children of the people we visited were visiting with the grandchildren, 3 little children. And the mother, as busy as she was with the 3 children, at night took time to keep a journal of what each child was doing, and she delighted in comparing what this child was doing that this child had not yet done at that time, and so forth. It was of interest to her. And this was talked about. The oldest was 4.5, and there was one 2, and then there was a 3-month-old baby. The 3-month-old baby did not seem to partake in that conversation. But the others had their ears in there. They were not oblivious, even though they were playing or coloring something. Of course, in school there's tremendous comparison going on. The whole grading system is a system of comparing, because the educator will say this is not what it's for. It is to let the parents know, and so forth and so forth. But it has the intrinsic quality of comparing. And a child who receives an F or an A, what does he or she do? And how do the parents feel when the A comes home on the report card or the F? How do they feel? Not what do they say. They may say, I don't care what grade you get, just as long as this or that. But one may say that and feel differently. I know this myself. Used to assure our son that I didn't care, but I cared. And he probably watched the face rather than listening to the words, and got his information that way. We've lived through all of this. And our present thoughts and actions and reactions are the sum total result of everything that's happened to us in the past. The whole past is manifesting in our present words and thoughts and actions. Not only of our own past, but obviously of the past of our parents and teachers and other friends and co-workers who affect us. We're all interrelated, not just with all of present humanity, but with all of the past humanity. Because the way that our parents respond to us is the way they were responded to by their parents, or the way they have rebelled against how their parents responded to them, and then the product of rebellion, of their rebellion. But rebellion always has in it the elements of what one rebels against. It's not free from that. The person with whom I was talking, with whom we were talking this morning, discussing this, said, this is not, there's something much deeper that makes for the sense of me. All of this I understand, but there's a much deeper sense of me. It has something to do with desire. So we looked at that, the desire to be somebody or to become somebody, which again is due to comparison with what others are, with what one is not, and wanting to be like others or better than others or as good as others. The desire to be safe in a role. This was another discussion in a meeting. Tremendous desire to find a role which one can slip into and feel safe and get a feeling of integrity through that role. If one plays it well, if one conforms well to the demands of the role, a feeling of integrity that doesn't hold up though, because roles come to an end or may get shattered. And then the feeling of the me in confusion, at a loss, or insecure, without integrity. It's called in psychology an identity crisis. Particularly, this term is used for teenagers who supposedly haven't found their proper identity. Maybe not just supposedly, they don't have found it. Nothing of an identity or role or position in the group to give a feeling of security. Yes, this is me. But we're questioning this whole thing. Here we're not looking to adjust the ailing feeling of self, the insecure feeling of self, to the environment, the circumstances, the group, or the partner in a marriage, but to question this whole feeling of self, to see whether one can get to the bottom of it, if there is a bottom to it. Because one may have found out very clearly throughout one's life that there is something about this feeling of self that is at the root of our conflicts and sorrows, anxieties and rages and angers and feelings of hurt. We went into that yesterday. Not just the root of this self-image. No, the self-image being the root of personal or interpersonal problems, but of global conflagration and holocaust. So coming back to this feeling of self which seems to be deeper yet. The desire for things. Can one watch the arising of that? So one just doesn't stay with a conclusion that because there are desires for being somebody, there must be a self. But to see if one can observe, be aware of the arising of desire and the soil that it arises out of. Mentioned already, feeling of insecurity, inadequacy, feeling at the short end of things, what seems sometimes a bottomless pit of lack, feeling of lack, of not having enough. As one person put it, in looking at this wanting that it manifests here and sitting, and as it is being observed, it just seems like the wanting of a baby, just wanting. So there is the feelings of inadequacy, lack, loneliness, fear, and one can tell the brain scanning for something, for some object or state to compensate for that or to get one out of that. Can just happen sometimes. It's not a very severe crisis or anything, but there's a certain feeling of boredom, nothing happening, in the brain scanning like a smorgasbord, what to offer to oneself. Would this do it? Would that do it? But this is observable. And if something is found that would do it, then the feeling of desire for that. All happening in imagination. It needs no real object to be seen, of course. If one is walking through the streets, does window shopping, looks at things in the shop windows and seeing something. And imagining oneself having that and enjoying it, owning and possessing it, taking it home, showing it to others, that can arouse this whole movement of desire. It's a thought-produced movement. Memory-produced movement. Imagination-produced movement. Is that so? Is that verifiable? Can one test this for oneself? Where is the me in that? Does this itself give the feeling, constitute part of the feeling of me? The strength of desire, giving the feeling, this desire comes from me. But what is this me? The way one says it. Where does it come from? We've just tried to look at it. Feelings of inadequacy, loneliness, insecurity, which have their basis in earlier events in one's life. All of it recorded in the brain, remembered consciously or unconsciously, including physical, memory of physical states. And the body, physical body itself, also holds memory. The way We tense up and remain tense, that is shock remembered, or fear or whatever remembered by the bones and muscles and organs. Where is the me? Is it deeper yet? Does it have to do with the feeling of fear, with the fear of not being? The fear of not being, the fear of coming to an end, the fear of not existing. Because one hears, if one becomes interested in Eastern philosophy, Eastern religious teaching, dogma, that the self is an illusion. And as many people report, there's a frightening thought. When one starts working with it, sitting with it, it may be a very elating thought if one thinks of all the troubles that the self gives. That the troubles one would gladly be done with. But keep what the feeling of self provides in temporary pleasures and security, temporary feeling of stability or integrity. So is at the bottom of it all the fear of not being, which makes for this feeling of me. The fear of not being and the desire to continue being, the desire to protect this me, this self. And because of the fear of not being and the desire, the instant desire to protect, not wanting to go any further in this inquiry, or the inquiry becoming fuzzy, the mind drifting off into something else. Scared to tread on dangerous ground, what appears or feels like dangerous ground. Maybe even having a flash of panic, flush of panic, and getting the hell out of this. Why? Well, is this flight, this not wanting to have to do with it, this getting scared about it, which we're not denigrating, we're not putting it down at all, please. Don't inject it just because one injects these evaluations. We're looking at something very carefully and neutrally, objectively. Why does one need to escape? Not want to touch this, not want to go any further with it. One person said there is a tremendous fear of there being nothing, of me being nothing. There being just nothing. What is that, if one, as one voices this, the fear of being nothing? Is that a felt actuality or an assumption, a thought, an imagined threat? and one puts one's faith in the imagined threat and leaves the inquiry, escapes into something. Or maybe one hasn't had an actual experience of nothingness. Actually, if no thought arises, there's nothing frightening about that. On the contrary. But the thought arising, hey, there's nothing. I'm nothing. Will I lose this and this and this and this? Will I still have that and that and that? And the panic is there. Or this may go all very quickly, maybe not even fully consciously. Although, just because thoughts occur at what is called unconscious layer of the mind does not mean that they're not discernible. Just depends on the subtlety of the awareness, the sensitivity to thoughts, and the willingness, the interest we've said yesterday. One person didn't like that word interest, so find me another one. Maybe it isn't interest. Maybe one has no choice. One has to find out. And what it is that propels one, we won't give a name to. So if there's not the immediate withdrawing or running of unconscious material, bubbles up, as it were, into the conscious mind, then that is not unconscious. There's no unconscious mind. When the awareness is deep, sensitive, and not the me or the habit, let's say the habit of running and not wanting to face, taking over. This actually happens a lot in a retreat. Many people report it all the time. That suddenly, completely unasked for or unlooked for, a memory of some early childhood experience, long forgotten, maybe never even remembered, comes up into consciousness, is very clearly perceived. And people will ask often, what shall I do with that? I don't know. Look at it. See it. Because the moment one starts in trying to interpret it, find the meaning of it, who is the one who is doing that? That's the whole background, including that very same unconscious mind. The just seeing it, the pure awareness of it, is not connected to any background. It's here now. Just the clarity of insight. That has no interpretation. It's just light or insight, seeing. Making what is unconscious no longer unconscious. So the mind loses that division at that instant. We have not mentioned that the sense of me is a tremendously powerful habit of feeling / thinking / emoting. And as one observes habits, one is amazed at their power, at their seeming autonomy. With which habits function and perpetuate themselves. But just because something is very powerfully habitual in our way of feeling and thinking does not mean it cannot be examined, looked at, questioned, doubted. Observed without fear. Is that possible? Taking the risk, as it were, to go ahead and keep looking, keep watching what will reveal itself, not knowing what the end result will be, not looking for little shelters and refuges on the way. You can't observe from a shelter. You can observe a little bit. But even if it's just a lean-to, you can't see the sky. You have to step outside of the shelter to see all of the sky and all of the horizon and the trees and hills. And hear clearly what's going on. We will end here for today.